You don't need to flood your property with toxic chemical blocks or lay out dangerous mechanical snap traps to eliminate a rodent problem. The truth is, a specific set of living botanical barriers can physically force rats to reroute their paths away from your home entirely, relying on nothing but the power of pure, natural biochemistry. Today, we're looking at the exact 7 plants that produce volatile organic compounds so deeply threatening to the rat nervous system that these animals will choose to find somewhere else to be. Most homeowners reach immediately for commercial pellets, completely unaware that conventional pest control methods are fundamentally flawed. When you spread synthetic chemical blocks around your homestead, you aren't just targeting the rodents. Data published by the Rodale Institute proves that these aggressive chemical interventions systematically disrupt the delicate balance of your soil ecosystems and pose a severe secondary poisoning risk to the owls, hawks, and companion animals that share your land. It's a short-sighted system designed to sell products rather than work with nature. To fix the problem permanently, we have to look underground and into the shadows, understanding the animal we're dealing with. Rats operate almost entirely by smell, not by sight or by sound, but by pure, unfiltered scent. The rat's nose is one of the most sophisticated olfactory systems in the natural world, capable of detecting odors at concentrations so incredibly low they're completely invisible to human-made instruments. Rats don't just smell food, they smell danger, they smell shelter, and they smell whether a territory is occupied. Ancient grain farmers in Egypt understood this intuitively. Medieval European monasteries cultivated specific herb gardens as a living chemical barrier around their food stores. Farmers in China, India, and the Mediterranean all independently arrived at the same knowledge across centuries. What the ancients understood through direct observation, modern biochemists can now explain molecule by molecule. Rats are not brave, reckless explorers. They're profoundly risk-averse creatures. When they encounter an environment dominated by a threatening plant compound, their response is immediate avoidance. They don't investigate, they simply turn around. Our first line of defense is peppermint, known scientifically as Mentha piperita, that sharp, cooling, almost electric wave that hits the back of your sinuses when you smell fresh mint is incredibly invigorating for a human. For a rat, it's completely overwhelming, suffocating, and physically painful. The active compound responsible for this intense reaction is menthol. Pure peppermint essential oil contains menthol concentrations of up to 40%. According to research documented by the Cornell Cooperative Extension, this specific compound interacts directly with the TRPM8 receptor, which is a cold-sensing ion channel in the rodent nervous system. In rats, the overstimulation of this receptor creates a powerful sensory aversion response. The sensation isn't just an unpleasant smell, it registers as physical distress. Peppermint oil also contains menthone, methyl acetate, and a wide range of secondary terpene compounds that create a chemical footprint the rat's brain classifies as highly hazardous. In the wild, concentrations of volatile terpenes at that intensity often signal advanced organic decomposition or highly toxic plant matter. The rat's nervous system has evolved over thousands of years to move away from those specific signals. Ancient Romans cultivated peppermint extensively, weaving it into the thatching of granary roofs and strewing it across warehouse floors to protect their food supplies. To use this effectively on your homestead, you need to plant peppermint densely along the very base of your home's exterior walls, paying special attention to weak spots where utilities, pipes, or cables enter the foundation. You can also plant it as a thick, continuous border along your property line to create a permanent scent corridor that rats are extraordinarily reluctant to cross. Just remember that peppermint is highly invasive. You'll want to grow it in buried containers or use heavy-duty landscape edging to prevent it from taking over your lawn. That aggressive tendency to spread is the very thing that makes it an excellent barrier plant, as it fills empty space quickly and maintains a consistent chemical presence throughout the entire season. It thrives in almost any soil type, tolerates partial shade, and produces fresh growth rapidly after being cut. Trimming it regularly actually releases a fresh burst of volatile compounds, which significantly increases its overall deterrent effectiveness. Moving further into our botanical perimeter, we encounter lavender, or Lavandula angustifolia. The thick, sweet, and slightly camphoraceous air above a lavender field in peak bloom has been prized across human cultures for more than 2,000 years as a symbol of cleanliness and calm. Rats, however, find it absolutely repulsive. The primary volatile compounds found within lavender are linalool, linaloyl acetate, and camphor. While these molecules are mild to the human nose, The dense concentration produced by a mature lavender hedge creates a chemical signal that rodents are neurologically programmed to avoid. A detailed study published by the UC Agriculture and Natural Resources Division discovered that specific volatile organic compounds like linalool function as highly effective natural pest deterrents due to their direct impact on behavioral avoidance in small mammals. When rodents are exposed to linalool-heavy environments, they spend significantly less time in those zones and show elevated biological stress markers if they're forced to remain. The camphor component adds an extra layer of security. Camphor is a powerful terpene that interacts with the rat olfactory system by triggering receptors associated with chemical irritation rather than pleasant fragrance. To a rat's sensitive nose, a beautiful lavender planting isn't an aesthetic feature, it's a wall of chemical warning signals. Medieval French farmers planted lavender along the perimeters of their kitchen gardens as a matter of standard practice because they had observed across generations that rats simply refused to nest near it. Lavender is one of the most garden-friendly choices on our list. It's incredibly drought-tolerant once established, thrives in poor, well-drained soil, and produces its heaviest concentration of volatile oils during long, hot summers, which is exactly the season when local rat populations tend to peak. Planted in full sun along your main walkways, near household entry points, and as a structural border edging around your primary vegetable beds. It takes 1 to 3 years to reach adult size, but even young plants produce a meaningful chemical output. Unlike peppermint, lavender stays exactly where you put it, acting as a well-behaved perennial that earns its place on your homestead for decades. Next up is a plant that surprises a lot of people, the humble marigold, specifically the Tagetes species. Marigolds are so incredibly common and ordinary-seeming that most gardeners treat them as simple, cheerful filler, just something bright to throw into a border as an afterthought. But marigolds have been companion planted by agricultural societies on nearly every inhabited continent for reasons that go far beyond basic aesthetics. The ancient Aztecs cultivated tagetes extensively and documented their protective qualities. Colonial-era gardeners in England planted them around vegetable plots as a standard practice, and African farmers have utilized Tagetes minuta, the Mexican marigold, as a natural pest barrier for centuries. The biochemistry behind this common flower is fascinating. USDA agricultural researchers have verified that Tagetes species produce a distinct class of compounds called thiophenies, which are sulfur-based organic molecules with intensely sharp, pungent chemical signatures. To the human nose at a normal distance, marigolds just smell slightly tangy and bitter, but to a rat, which perceives scent at concentrations orders of magnitude more sensitive than ours, a dense planting of marigolds produces an atmosphere dominated by heavy sulfur compounds that register as highly aversive at the neurological level. There's also a hidden root chemistry at play here. Marigold roots actively produce and release a compound called alpha-terthianol, which has documented nematicidal and pest-repelling properties. This root exudate changes the soil chemistry in the immediate area. Because rats are natural diggers, they encounter this compound through their sensitive skin and mucous membranes during burrowing. It isn't lethal, but it's deeply unpleasant. To make this work, you must plant marigolds densely. A single isolated flower here and there won't accomplish much. You need a solid, unbroken row of French marigolds along the base of your vegetable garden fence, or a tight ring of African marigolds around the entire perimeter of your raised beds. They grow rapidly from seed, flower prolifically, and self-seed readily in warmer climates, meaning once you establish them, they'll often return year after year on their own. They also happen to be one of the best overall companion plants for your vegetables, deterring whiteflies, aphids, and bad nematodes while drawing in beneficial pollinators. If you need a more aggressive chemical barrier, we must look to wormwood, or Artemisia absinthium. There's a clear reason this plant appears so frequently in ancient agricultural manuals, monastery records, and old household guides. It's always noted near granaries, always mentioned near food storage, and always described as a plant that vermin simply will not approach. Wormwood is not a gentle herb. It's practically a chemical weapon in botanical form. The primary compound responsible for its reputation is absinthin, a sesquiterpene lactone so intensely bitter that it can be detected by the human palate at a concentration of just 1 part in 70,000. It stands as one of the most bitter natural compounds found in the entire plant kingdom. But while humans experience its bitterness, rats process wormwood through their olfactory system first. The volatile oils within wormwood, including absinthiol, thujone, and azulene, produce a scent profile that registers as acutely hazardous to rodents. Thujone possesses well-known neurotoxic properties at high doses, and the rat's nervous system has evolved a powerful avoidance response to any plant that produces it. This is an adaptive behavior that protects them from accidental poisoning. Ancient Egyptian papyri listing agricultural practices dating back over 3,000 years specifically recommend wormwood for protecting grain stores. Roman writers like Pliny and Columella explicitly recommended planting it heavily around storage areas. Wormwood grows to about 3 feet in height, producing distinctive silvery gray-green foliage with a strong, complex medicinal fragrance. It's extremely drought-tolerant, thrives in poor soils, loves full sun, and requires practically zero maintenance once it takes root. It produces its volatile compounds continuously throughout the growing season, with peak chemical output occurring during the hottest summer months. Planted along your back fence lines, at the sharp corners of your property boundaries, near compost heaps, or around the perimeter of any old outbuildings where rats might try to seek shelter. However, you must be careful, because wormwood produces allelopathic compounds through its roots, meaning it actively suppresses the growth of nearby plants. Keep it well away from your delicate vegetable beds, and give your favorite ornamental plants some breathing room. Wormwood isn't a neighborly plant. It stakes out its territory chemically and defends it fiercely, which is precisely why it works so well for rodent defense. Our fifth botanical guardian is a staple of the kitchen garden, garlic or Allium sativum. The garlic bulb is one of the most chemically complex food plants on the planet. Inside each individual clove, 2 distinct compounds are kept physically separated from one another, alliin and a specialized enzyme called allionase. The exact moment that clove is damaged, sliced, crushed, or bitten by a digging rodent, those 2 components combine to produce allicin. That sharp, sulfurous, incredibly penetrating scent that instantly fills a kitchen is allicin releasing into the atmosphere. To a human cook, it signals a delicious meal. To a foraging rat, it signals immediate alarm. Allicin belongs to a class of organosulfur compounds that produce some of the most intense volatile signatures found in nature. A rat's highly developed olfactory system relies heavily on sulfur-based scent markers for critical environmental signals, including the detection of predators. When it encounters allicin, it triggers what researchers describe as a strong, unconditioned aversive response. The animal doesn't need to learn through trial and error that garlic is unpleasant. The avoidant behavior is hardwired into its DNA. Garlic has been utilized as a natural pest deterrent across virtually every historical agricultural culture that cultivated it. Ancient Chinese texts recommended planting it near grain storage. Egyptian records show it was used heavily in pest management, and traditional Indian farming uses it extensively as a protective companion plant. As a defensive homestead plant, garlic offers several distinct advantages. It grows entirely underground, which means its primary chemical payload is situated directly in the soil where rats love to dig and burrow. Furthermore, its leaves and stems release volatile sulfur compounds when brushed or bruised, which a rat moving through the planting will inevitably do. To maximize its effectiveness, plant your garlic cloves thickly in the autumn for a late spring harvest, or place potted garlic plants around your borders in the spring. Run a dense perimeter of garlic along the edges of your vegetable gardens, near your compost areas, and around the structural bases of your raised beds. It provides a double benefit on the homestead, serving as a powerful, silent chemical deterrent while simultaneously providing you with an abundant harvest of one of the most versatile, health-promoting foods available. Let's now turn our attention to rosemary, known botanically as Salvia rosmarinus. Long before modern science provided a systematic explanation for its effectiveness, Mediterranean farmers offered a purely practical one. They knew that if you planted rosemary near the granary, the rats would find somewhere else to live. This was documented behavior across traditional agricultural communities in southern France, northern Italy, coastal Spain, and the Greek islands for centuries. Rosemary wasn't grown around food stores for its visual charm. It was planted there because it delivered reliable results. The underlying chemistry is now thoroughly understood by botanists. Rosemary produces a remarkably dense, complex mixture of volatile terpene compounds, including camphor, borneol, camphene, alpha-pinene, and most significantly, 1,8-cineol, which is also commonly known as eucalyptol. This specific compound serves as a dominant volatile component in several of the world's most intensely aromatic plants, and it functions as a potent natural repellent across a wide variety of pest species. In small mammals, 1,8-cineol and the camphor fractions of rosemary oil have been shown to induce a powerful olfactory aversion. The sheer density of the volatile output from a mature rosemary shrub, especially during warm weather when the sun cooks the foliage and drives off the essential oils, creates a thick chemical fog that rats find deeply hostile and uncomfortable to navigate. Rosemary is also incredibly practical from a land management perspective. It's a hardy, perennial evergreen in most temperate climates, meaning it provides your homestead with reliable, year-round chemical coverage, not just during the warm summer growing season. It's exceptionally drought-tolerant, thrives in poor, well-drained soils, and becomes increasingly bushy and dense with age. A mature rosemary shrub can easily reach 4 or 5 feet in height and spread nearly as wide, creating a substantial physical and chemical barrier on your property. Planted at the corners of your raised beds, along exposed pathways, near doorways, and flanking any specific areas where you've noticed rodent activity in the past. In colder northern climates where rosemary can't survive the freezing winters outdoors, you can easily grow it in large containers. Keep them outside in strategic positions during the spring and summer, and bring them onto the porch or indoors when the heavy frost arrives. Running your hand through a mature rosemary bush releases a massive wave of resinous, piney, medicinal scent that feels deeply grounding. It's a fragrance that has surrounded human dwellings for millennia, and a huge part of the reason it became so deeply embedded in domestic life was its quiet, constant ability to hold a secure perimeter. Finally, we come to the 7th plant on our list, elderberry, or Sambucus. This is the one most modern pest control guides completely overlook, yet its historical record is striking, and the chemistry behind it is easily the most sophisticated of all. In rural communities across northern and central Europe, from England through Germany and into Poland and Ukraine, the elder tree occupied a highly specific, deeply intentional position in the managed landscape. It was always planted right at the edge of the property, near the livestock outbuildings, and immediately adjacent to root cellars and grain stores. In many old traditions, cutting down an elder tree without a very good reason was considered deeply unwise. This wasn't due to mere superstition, but because rural people knew the elder tree performed a critical, practical function, it kept the rodent populations away from their winter food supply. The elder tree produces a highly complex defensive chemistry throughout every single part of its structure. The green leaves and thick bark contain sambunigrin and other cyanogenic glycosides. These are advanced compounds that immediately release hydrogen cyanide when the plant tissue is physically damaged or chewed. While this doesn't pose a danger to humans through normal proximity, rats process their surroundings through incredibly sensitive olfactory receptors. They are highly evolved to detect subtle chemical danger signals, and they register the cyanogenic chemistry of elderberry foliage as an immediate existential threat. The volatile chemistry of crushed elder leaves produces an acrid, highly unusual scent that is entirely distinct from almost any other plant in the garden, and it triggers a hardwired, instinctual avoidance response in the rodent brain. Elder trees are remarkably resilient and will grow in almost any soil condition, tolerating both wet and dry extremes. They establish themselves rapidly, frequently reaching heights of 8 to 10 feet within just 2 or 3 years of planting. Once established, they can begin to colonize naturally, spreading slowly but steadily along your fence lines and property edges, which are the exact areas where their chemical presence is most valuable. The elder is a profoundly generous plant to have on a homestead. The beautiful summer flowers produce that classic elderflower fragrance loved in cordials, syrups, and teas. The dark berries, when properly cooked and prepared, never eaten raw, yield one of the most antioxidant-rich, immune-supportive foods in the entire botanical tradition. A single plant that feeds your family, supports your seasonal health, and quietly repels pests from your property while requiring absolutely nothing from you in return is a true cornerstone of permaculture design. Plant elderberry at the outer boundaries of your property, along your main fence lines, or directly behind your garden sheds and compost heaps. Give it plenty of room to mature, leave it alone, and let it do what it has done for thousands of years: protect the homestead. There's a fascinating realization that occurs when you look closely at traditional agricultural practices, things that were once dismissed as mere folklore, old wives' tales, or the unscientific habits of uneducated ancestors. When you strip away the modern skepticism, you find a deep, proven chemistry underneath them. You realize something humbling: they knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't possess our modern instruments, our peer-reviewed journals, or our complex molecular diagrams, but they possessed something incredibly powerful: centuries of direct observation, inherited wisdom, and the accumulated practical intelligence of people who lived and died by the quality of their food stores. They simply couldn't afford to get it wrong. Rats have always been there, following human civilization for as long as we've been storing grain and building permanent shelters. In response to that constant, unrelenting pressure, our ancestors turned to the plant kingdom for solutions. They discovered that certain natural scents created invisible borders that rodents simply refused to cross, so they planted those borders deliberately and passed that vital knowledge forward across generations. Somewhere during our rapid transition to industrial agriculture and synthetic chemical pest control, that ancient chain of knowledge was broken. It was left behind in old texts, hidden in medieval monastery garden plans, and buried in the handwritten letters of old country estate managers. What this list represents isn't new discovery, it's recovered information. Modern science doesn't replace the observations of our ancestors, it validates them. The beautiful reality of these 7 plants is that they cost very little to acquire, require modest effort to establish, feed our native pollinators, provide fresh herbs for our kitchens, and make our homesteads infinitely more beautiful in the process. They operate through the exact same chemical logic that kept granaries safe hundreds of years before the word biochemistry was ever uttered. Imagine your homestead designed with this multi-layered botanical shield, peppermint guarding the foundation, lavender lining the pathways, marigolds planted in dense rows around your vegetables, wormwood securing the back fence line, garlic scattered throughout the kitchen garden, rosemary flanking your entry points, and elderberry standing as a patient, substantial guardian at the outer edges of your land. There are no perfect, effortless solutions when it comes to managing clever pests like rats. They are intelligent, highly adaptable, and incredibly persistent creatures. But a homestead built intentionally with these specific plants creates an entire ecosystem that rodents instinctively find hostile and uninviting. You aren't fighting against nature when you design your space this way, you're partnering with it. If one of these plants surprised you today or made you look at a specific area of your property in a completely new light, drop a comment below and tell me which one you're going to plant first. The conversation happening down in the comments is genuinely one of the most valuable parts of this channel. We have a wonderful community of growers sharing what works on their specific land and in their unique climates. Someone out there has already solved the exact problem you're dealing with right now, and they're usually right there in the comments waiting to help you out. Subscribe if you found this valuable, because there's a lot more content coming along these exact lines, exploring the remarkable things plants can do that most gardeners never think to ask about. Don't forget to grab the free planting guide linked down in the description box below. It lays out exactly how to position each of these 7 plants relative to a standard home layout, covering foundation placement, garden borders, and compost zones. It's highly practical and specific, so definitely download a copy before you head out to your local garden center. The knowledge was always there, friends. Now it's yours.